This story involves a father-in-law who brought his wife to apologize. The mother-in-law was on her knees, crying and begging. What could have happened? Let's find out together. Please like and subscribe our channel.
Hello. I am a woman who is now in her 6th year of marriage. My husband and I are both working. And thankfully, we received financial support from my parents when we got married. So we have almost no loans left to repay. And we are relatively comfortable financially. When I was very young, my family was not well off. However, my parents learned to work hard under others. And after starting a business, the situation completely changed. Thanks to my parents, who tried to raise me without any shortcomings. I grew up without anything to envy from others. But, after I entered university, they didn't give me any living expenses or pocket money. Except for tuition fees, so I lived independently. I didn't have a big complaint. I was attending a prestigious university, and even when I was a student, I could tutor other students recommended by my seniors. It wasn't hard, was it? But for the first time, I earned money on my own, bought delicious things for my parents, and lived a rewarding life. I also received a scholarship and graduated from school with pretty good grades. And I immediately got a job. My current husband was my boss at that time. And I found him very attractive as he helped me with various work-related matters. We started dating after working together on top projects, and seeing him help me, who was quite clumsy. Even when we were dating, he burdened a lot of the date costs. He said that men should pay for dates. He often heard from friends, seniors, and juniors that he was a generous person. I just thought he was a giving person. But after dating for about 3 years and trying to get married, he had almost no savings. He said he spent all of it on living expenses and supporting his parents. I was living with my parents, and I had never given them living expenses. They told me to save money as much as possible while living together, and to gather wedding funds on my own. I just thought our situations were very different. When I went to say hello, the house was not poor. And they said they were preparing for their old age step by step. Both of us are still early in society. So we thought it was fun and lightly passed it. I didn't tell my parents the details. But they seemed to have a feeling when they saw us preparing for the wedding. One day, my parents called me and my then boyfriend, who is now my husband. They said they had saved money since the moment their only daughter entered college and wanted to support us with a not small amount of money. Honestly, I was surprised, and I had no intention of receiving that money. I tried to refuse, but my husband suddenly thanked them and bowed deeply to my parents. Seeing that, my parents, who I thought would dislike it, rather said, "If you want to feed a son-in-law, you should be a man who knows how to bend at least one pride." I like it. I also agreed with my father's opinion at that time. Getting married was not difficult. Although my parents-in-law did not give a penny, everything went smoothly because of the money my parents helped us with. We found out that we were having a beautiful princess at 8 months into our marriage. And I took a leave of absence before the last month. I was able to take maternity and child care leave. And I did not have a big concern about breaking my career. Even if I took a leave of absence, 80 of the salary was paid. I also had saved money, so I didn't need to live frugally. Like all families raising children, I was very tired mentally and physically. Especially, my body was hit a lot by giving birth, and I didn't recover quickly. So my parents were very worried. So, they even called a postpartum helper to our house. And I was able to care for my child relatively comfortably. One day, my parents, who came to see their granddaughter, asked me, "Are you having a hard time these days?" I said, I'm blessed because mom and dad helped me. Raising a child is always hard. Why? They seem to be hiding something. When I pressed them, they finally told me that my husband had been visiting them once or twice a month since I took a leave of absence from work, saying that he was having a hard time because my salary was halved. He said that he was lacking living expenses and was living frugally these days. In front of my parents, I didn't show much reaction and said that I was living a bit frugally these days. I said not to worry because I would return to work as soon as the baby turned 1 year old. After preparing my lunch, my parents went back to their home. But my heart was uneasy. My husband didn't bring that money home, and he didn't do anything for me. My mind went blank at the thought that he might have another woman. Seeing our daughter, who was innocently laughing and crying, made me feel even more distant. That night, as soon as my husband came home from work, I yelled, "Where did you spend all the money, my husband?" Who immediately realized what I was talking about, kneeled down in front of the entrance, without even taking off his shoes, and begged. I scolded him to stop groveling, and tell me where he spent the money. I shouted like a mad person, asking if he was seeing someone else, or if he had started gambling or stocks. At that moment, I even forgot that our daughter had just fallen asleep. Then, waving his hands, he said, "I really didn't spend it on those things." Then, where did he spend all the money he had received several times, I asked. Then he said, "I spent it buying drinks for friends and juniors." I was so disgusted that he had lied to my parents, who had given us money for buying a house, and had taken the money. I didn't even want to talk to him. We were in a cold war for a month. We only had necessary conversations, and did not make eye contact at all. My husband stuck to me like a leech as soon as he came home from work, and was busy subtly watching me. But he was a caring father to our daughter, and for a while, he took care of all the housework and childcare, so I felt a little relieved. So one day, I seriously set the mood, and asked him to show me if he really spent it on drinks. After a moment of hesitation, he opened the bank app. I looked from the first time he received the money, and it was true that some of it was spent on drinks. The places where the card was used were restaurants and bars near the company that I knew. But from the third time, there were transfer details in the name of my mother-in-law, ranging from a few 100,000 won to 2 million won. When I asked what this was, he just shut his mouth and looked at the floor. At that moment, I hit my husband's head sitting across from me. I said it's a divorce if he doesn't explain it right now. Then he said, "I gave mom some money because she needed to travel, and put some money in the savings." When I said, "Did you give your mom pocket money and send her on a trip with the money you lied to my parents and received?" he couldn't say anything. I was so angry that I immediately called my mother-in-law. As soon as she answered, I yelled at her to give back the money. My mother-in-law said, "Why are you like this? Calm down and let's talk tomorrow," and hurriedly tried to hang up. Clearly, it was content that my father-in-law should not hear. When I yelled that I would go there immediately and give me back the money, she said, "Is it so precious for a well-off child to share a little? You are a family of our house now. A woman is an outsider after marriage." I thought she would at least apologize if I pointed it out. But she came out more brazen than I thought. When I asked where she spent the money, she said she had plastic surgery and put some money in the new account. I was so angry that I said she should return all that money. Then she laughed and said, "Why should I? It was our son who gave mom pocket money." I kicked my husband, who was restless next to me, and hit his back. And she said not to touch the precious child of others. I didn't want to hear my mother-in-law's screaming voice anymore. So I threw my husband's phone and broke it. I said, "Let's get a divorce right now." and kicked my husband out. I thought he would resist, but surprisingly, he left obediently. We all know where he would go. It seems that he went straight to his parents' house. The next morning, the intercom at home rang nonstop. I tried to ignore it, but my daughter couldn't sleep well. And it seemed too noisy for the neighborhood, so I saw my father-in-law's face. I had no choice but to open the door. And he almost grabbed my mother-in-law by the collar and threw her in the living room. He kneeled her down in front of me, kneeled himself down and started begging, "My child, please forgive us just this once. Your father didn't mean any harm. It's my fault for not controlling my wife. I will return all the money we received so far." I listened, wondering what he would say, but I was speechless. No harm intended? So he lied on my behalf. My daughter bought drinks for people around him with the money he received, and even paid tribute to his mother-in-law. It seemed ridiculous to think that he meant well. I cut off whatever he was trying to say and said I wouldn't accept an apology. We seemed to have a short conversation, but it seemed impossible to communicate, so I asked him to disappear from my sight. Whether he was fighting or being scolded one-sidedly, my mother-in-law was completely drained of energy. My father-in-law, who has been with her for nearly 40 years, was shaking, perhaps because he was scared. Seeing that, all sorts of feelings fell away. From that day on, I called a mover, packed up my husband's belongings, which were not long packed, and sent them to his parents' house. I texted my husband, "Vomit all the money you've received so far. Let's have a consensual divorce and see our daughter's face occasionally. Or let's finish it with alimony through a lawsuit. Because of my husband, who keeps contacting me and coming to see me, I think I have to sue." My mother-in-law also kept contacting me consistently. I was so angry that I couldn't calm down, so every time I answered the phone, I said, "Mother, your knees are free. Instead of that, vomit up the money you received. You should also hire a lawyer when your father hires one. You're going to be sued for divorce soon. Since you've had a pretty makeover, remarriage will be easy." And hung up. She keeps ranting and ridiculing, but these days the phone calls are quiet. Maybe she thought I wouldn't change my mind? Thinking of the two idiots who lived without worrying about money for almost a year with my parents' money makes me feel like I'm going to explode with rage. But when I see my daughter growing up without knowing anything, I feel like I have to live on. I'm going to try to get all the money I can get, including alimony, while divorcing. Even if I feel like I'm becoming malicious because of them. I want to get at least a minimum of revenge.
From the perspective of the parents-in-law, it seems they have a crazy, good-for-nothing son-in-law and in-laws. Don't you think these types of people should definitely be discarded? They may be begging for forgiveness now, but if this is overlooked, they might show their true colors again. What are your thoughts?